of Krugman. I'm a photographer, a crypto artist, and the founder of All Ships, a culture company. I grew up in a town called Needham outside of Boston, Massachusetts. And I think the way that I grew up really affected where I'm at now in many ways. One is that my father was doing information technology at Boston University. So he was responsible for a lot of the network state building that we live in today. And I had a lot of early access to that type of technology. We were one of the first, households that had AOL and had, the early Macintosh computers. And so for every kind of evolution of that technology, I was ahead of the curve a little bit. Also, my parents were very encouraging of my creativity and saying, the most important thing you can do in your life is to make sure that you love what you do because you're going to be doing a lot of it. The combination of that early creative support mixed with the tools and technology that enabled me to create, beautiful things over the course of my entire life have put me in a pretty good position to be an artist who makes their living on the edges of the internet today. I think my creative interests are kind of expansive in the sense that the way I think about photography is the way I think about every creative act, which is that it's all kind of sculpture. I've talked about my dad already, but my mother is a huge influence on me, both as a host. She's an incredible, very social person, bringing people together, but she's also a chef, and I grew up in the kitchen. And so one of my biggest creative outlets and passions is cooking. And cooking to me is my favorite form of sculpture, where, you have this really meticulous chemical process in which you build art, straight up. I make these beautiful plates, and I love to create experiences for people, and I like to decorate a table, and I like to really refine people's enjoyment and experience. And I think hospitality is one of the most root human needs, and also is one of the most beautiful parts about being alive. And so I kind of apply this creative lens to everything I do, whether it's writing, cooking, photography. I mean, the list goes on and on. We had family dinner every night, and it was, at the time, we didn't have cell phones, but there was a strict rule that's we don't answer the phone. We don't answer the landline. We sit, we're with each other, we're present. I think one of the problems with our society nowadays is that we've abstracted away from that a lot. People will DoorDash their food to their house and eat alone, and we've removed a lot of the humanness from the human experience. And even, with phones and social media and how much that permeates our society today, I think it's more important than ever to lean in and dig into what makes us really, really human. And even now with my girlfriend, the thing we love to do the most is put our phones down and cook together and make handmade pasta and slow processes where we're having a tactile experience and talking to each other face to face and going deep and asking questions. So part of my practice, if I'm gonna do this digital art thing and spend a lot of my time in online social spaces, I absolutely will work to counterbalance it with those purely human experiences. Is there anything more human than bread, butter, a candle, and a glass of wine with someone you love? I create art because I feel compelled to. It's almost like a compulsion. I think in terms of addressing the experience of noticing detail, I think that that's something you can practice. It's like music. The more you see, the more you see. So if I spend a few years collecting cars in the street that are all perfectly lined up, like my project Drive, or if I spend time studying the physics and mechanics of rain hitting puddles in Times Square, for example, I have trained my eye so much to see those details that I can't help but see those details everywhere. And a fun way to explore that is to get a macro lens and a camera, go to the forest. You can draw a 1 meter ring in your mind or whatever, and you could spend an entire day in that 1 meter ring with this lens and see an entire world that you didn't know was there just by looking and paying attention to the detail. When I go out and shoot, the metaphor I use is I'm going to the quarry, and I'm bringing home a block of marble, and then when I'm home and I have the technology like Lightroom and Photoshop, then you start chiseling away and you start removing things. And removing meaning like I'm disincluding this, I'm including this, I'm pulling up the exposure, I'm crushing the I'm crushing the highlights, I'm crushing the blacks, and I'm playing with it, and I'm carving the stone.
One of the things I love so much about New York is just the endless variety. I mean, there's backdrops everywhere, there's always stores turning over, new things to look at, new things to experience. And what I do a lot of the time is I just will find a scene that I love and I will let people walk into the scene and I'll wait for the composition to form around it. And it's just such a great way to move through the city. And even when I don't have my camera, it makes the city more fun to be in because I'm more observant. I'm looking at everything in infinite detail, and I'm such an admirer of the way that people do things, the design, the lettering, the lighting. It's just this endless game that you get to play. And I think I learned that from photography.
I saw this really fucked up quote the other day. I forget who said it. I think it was Jack Butcher. He said this quote that was like, much of procrastination is the fear of realizing how good you are. And it's just like something like that. I don't want to butcher it, pun very intended. But it was just like, sometimes people are afraid at their own potential. And they're like, it's easier to sit in your, I don't know, little bubble than to be like, oh, I'm capable of more. And because once you know you're capable of more, you have a sense of responsibility to do more. And that's very paralyzing for people, including myself. The thing that's holding me back in my art career right now is me. I'm just my own worst enemy. And I think that's true for a lot of artists. Like, I try to do too much, I have so much going on, I have so many interests, and I spread myself really thin, and it's exhausting and tiring, and my inability to get really organized and hyper-focused is definitely something that I need to work on as an artist. Like, my financial literacy and planning for the future and just staying on top of my day-to-day maintenance of life suffers when I focus on the art. And so I think that I could do a lot more. I have a lot of untapped potential that I'm eager to tap, and it just requires a bit more focus and even more effort. And so I'm eager to do that, and that's what's coming next. And my next projects are even more ambitious and deeper and more thoughtful and more complex, and it's going to require a big step up, and I'm willing to take on the challenge. I really feel motivated by love in all the senses, but romantic love, love of friends, love of the world, love of strangers, love of the experience of being human. And maybe that's a response to some of the nihilism of the online world that I see today, where it's all these people online are constantly complaining. They're complaining about the algorithm, they're complaining about AI, they're complaining about politics. And I'm like, do you understand what a miracle it is that we even have this technology, that we have this experience, that you're taking a breath? Back to this idea of looking at the details. I think the experience of being a photographer makes life so beautiful to me because it's taught me to be observational in every aspect of my life. I notice somebody holding the door for someone else. I notice somebody going out of their way to make someone else's day better. If you are nice to people, you create this bubble around you that your life actually is better. And to see people abusing that idea and moving through life with sharpness and lack of care and lack of understanding of other people and lack of curiosity about other people, it offends the sensibilities. And so I just want to say, lean into the empathy, lean into the love, and lean into the beauty and the experience of being alive on this earth, because it's very short.